Don't look so proud. You're just the babysitter of my children. My sister sneered, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other flicking crumbs off the table, like royalty dismissing peasants. Hi everyone, my name is Elena Carter. I'm 27 years old. Today's story is titled, My Sister Announced She's Pregnant for the 4th Time. Yet no one even knows who fathered her kids. But I'm done raising her minions. So I left, but she called the police on me, and this happened. The air in the kitchen was thick, heavy with the smell of burnt toast and yesterday's coffee. My parents stood behind her, silent as if her words were gospel. I glanced at the 3 kids scattered on the floor. Blocks, crayons, juice stains marking every corner of the rug. Their eyes found mine, small hands reaching for me out of habit, not love. Because for years I'd been the one who fed them, bathed them, taught them bedtime prayers. Not their mother, not the woman now smirking across from me, pregnant yet again. I told you, Elena! My mom's voice broke the silence, her tone carrying that sharp finality I'd grown to hate. Family means sacrifice. Your sister needs you more than you'll ever understand. She's fragile. Fragile. That word cut deeper than I wanted to admit. She was fragile while she lounged in bed till noon. She was fragile while I balanced 2 jobs and came home to screaming children. She was fragile while I signed away pieces of my 20s just to keep their lights on. My father adjusted his glasses, refusing to meet my eyes. You're single. You don't understand real responsibility. This is your role until you start a family of your own. Until then, don't complain. The words echoed like a verdict. My role. My cage. My life not mine anymore. My chest tightened, a dull roar filling my ears. I wanted to scream, but the scream lodged itself in my throat, trapped behind years of silence. Instead, I whispered, I'm not your babysitter. I'm not your servant. I'm done. My sister's laughter was shrill, bouncing off the walls. Done? Where would you even go, Elena? You have no one. You'll crawl back. They always do. But I had already made my decision. That night, I packed a single bag, left the house without looking back, and for the first time in years, breathed. I didn't know then what my sister had planned, but I was about to find out. The knock came at dawn, loud and deliberate, shattering the fragile peace I'd found in my tiny rented room. At first, I thought it was the landlord, another warning about the late rent. But when I cracked the door open, the glint of badges caught the dim hallway light. Miss Carter, one officer asked, his voice flat, rehearsed. We received a call. You've been accused of abandoning children in your care. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My sister's trap had already sprung. The words abandoning children clanged like iron bars in my head. She hadn't wasted any time. Less than 12 hours since I walked out, and she'd spun her story into law. I gripped the doorframe, trying to steady my voice. Those kids are not mine. Their mother is at home. I left because I was being exploited, not because I abandoned anyone. The second officer's eyes softened, just slightly. But procedure was procedure. We'll need you to come down to the station to clarify. Clarify, as though truth were a simple, tidy thing. I grabbed my jacket, my bag still half unpacked on the floor. As we walked past the neighbors' doors, I felt their eyes burning through the peepholes, whispers waiting to sprout. By the time I sat in the back of the squad car, shame had already wrapped itself around me like chains. At the station, the questions were sharp, each one designed to pin me down. How many hours a week were you caring for the children? Did their mother ever leave you with explicit responsibility? Do you have proof you were not their legal guardian? Proof. How could I prove the absence of chains I'd never agreed to wear? I told them everything. About the nights I came home from shifts to find toddlers in diapers, about school forms signed with my handwriting, about the groceries I'd bought on my paycheck. Every word felt like confession, not of guilt, but of a life stolen. The officer scribbled, nodding occasionally, though his eyes betrayed doubt. We'll need to verify with your family, he said finally. Family. The very word felt poisonous. That evening I was released but not cleared. Walking out of the station, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I didn't see a criminal. I saw a woman who had finally drawn a line. But I also saw the storm building behind me. When I stepped back into my room, the silence wasn't comforting anymore. It was accusatory. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the mattress, vibrating like a trapped insect. 20 missed calls, 10 voicemails, all from my parents. I pressed play. "Elena!" My mother's voice hissed through the speaker, low and venomous. "How could you humiliate this family like that? The police? Really? Your sister is carrying a child, and you run away like a selfish brat. Do you want the whole town to know what kind of daughter you are?" Click. The next voicemail was my father, stern and clipped. "Come back. Now, before things get worse." I let the phone fall onto the bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. Their words weren't new, but something inside me shifted as I replayed them. For years, I'd swallowed their disappointment like medicine, bitter but necessary. But tonight, the taste was unbearable. I pulled out the folder I'd been hiding in my bag. Pay stubs, receipts, bank statements, evidence of every dollar I had poured into that household. Rent money, groceries, school supplies, even the hospital bill from when the youngest had pneumonia. My name was there, inked in signatures, stamped in transactions. I had been more than a sister. I had been the scaffolding holding up a crumbling house. And they called it abandonment. I thought of the officer's words. "Do you have proof you weren't their guardian?" Maybe, just maybe, I had more proof than my sister ever realized. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from my sister. "You'll regret this. Everyone's on my side. You can't survive alone." Her confidence bled through every letter. She believed she owned me, that I would eventually crawl back. I sat there in the dim light, the folder heavy in my lap. A question pressed at me, one I had never allowed myself to ask out loud. What if I didn't go back? What if, instead, I showed the world the truth? The thought scared me, but it also lit something alive in my chest, something fierce and unfamiliar. That night, I made a vow. I wasn't just leaving. I was going to make sure they never chained me again. And it would start with those papers in my hand. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop with the folder spread across the table. The hum of machines and clinking cups gave me cover as I organized the papers into neat stacks. Each one told a story my family had buried, a quiet history of sacrifice they pretended never happened. The barista set down my latte with a kind smile, but even her warmth couldn't chase away the weight pressing against my ribs. My hands trembled as I tucked each receipt into clear plastic sleeves. It felt less like bookkeeping, more like loading ammunition. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't family. It was a voicemail from the officer I'd spoken to. His words were careful, but they struck hard. "We'll be visiting your parents' home to confirm statements. If you have anything you'd like to provide in your defense, now would be the time." Now would be the time. I stared at the folder. Proof of every night I stayed up with sick kids. Every paycheck siphoned into bills that weren't mine. Proof that I had been the adult when my sister chose to be a ghost. My pulse quickened. If the police saw this, if the truth reached outside the walls of that suffocating house, my sister's empire of lies would start to crack. But fear not at me. What if turning this over meant dragging the children through an investigation? They were innocent. They didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. I whispered to myself, if this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. It was something I'd heard online, a phrase people used when pain needed witnesses. For the first time, I understood it. I slipped the folder into my bag and stood. My legs felt steadier than the day before. The station wasn't far, but each step there felt like crossing a bridge I couldn't return from. Inside, the officer looked up, surprised to see me so soon. I set the folder down on his desk with a firmness that surprised even me. "You wanted proof?" Here it is. Every bill, every signature. I wasn't abandoning them. I was saving myself. He flipped open the folder, scanning the first few pages. His brows lifted just slightly, and in that small shift I knew the narrative was no longer entirely theirs. The officer leaned back in his chair, tapping a finger on one of the receipts. "This paints a very different picture," he said carefully. "Your sister claims she's been the one caring for those children, but these suggest otherwise." I watched his expression shift as he flipped through pages. My grocery lists, utility payments, even a field trip slip signed in my handwriting. My life reduced to transactions, but also undeniable evidence. "Do you realize," he continued, "that if this is accurate, you've been financially supporting minors without any legal obligation? That makes you a victim, not a suspect." The word victim sat heavy, strange. For years, I'd been called selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. Never victim. I nodded slowly. "I just want my life back. I want them to stop using me." He closed the folder. "We'll follow up. I can't promise how this ends, but I can promise your voice will be heard." Walking out of the station, the sunlight felt sharper, almost blinding. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving under their roof. I was standing outside of it, building a case, brick by brick. That evening, another voicemail waited for me. My father's voice, but different this time, strained, almost desperate. "Elena, what did you tell them?" "Your mother's shaken. Your sister's furious. Don't ruin this family. We can talk, but don't make this bigger than it is." Bigger than it is. As if years of my stolen freedom were small enough to fold into silence. I pressed delete. Then, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. The tide was shifting, and my sister, she knew it. 2 days later, I was summoned back to the station. My heart thudded against my ribs as I walked past the buzzing phones and uniformed officers. The same detective met me with a thin smile. "We spoke with your family," he began, gesturing toward a chair. "Your sister insisted you abandoned the children without warning. But when we asked her about bills, school forms, medical expenses, she couldn't provide a single document. Not one." A slow heat spread across my chest. Finally, cracks in her mask. "She grew defensive," he added, lowering his voice. "Then evasive. Eventually, she admitted she often relied on you for, well, almost everything. That changes things." I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" He folded his hands. "We'll escalate this to social services. They'll evaluate the children's welfare and determine custody arrangements. In the meantime, you're cleared of neglect. But expect resistance. Your sister won't let go easily." Cleared. The word echoed in my head like church bells. Walking home, I felt lighter, though the battle was far from over. Outside my building, an envelope was taped to the door. No name, just my sister's handwriting in rushed, jagged strokes. I tore it open. "You think paperwork makes you safe? Those kids love me. They'll always be mine. No one will believe you in the end." The letter shook in my hand. Her confidence was slipping, but her desperation was dangerous. She wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting the truth itself. Inside my room, I sat by the window, city lights flickering like restless thoughts. I whispered to myself, almost like a vow. She built her story on my silence. But I'm not silent anymore. The call from social services came sooner than I expected. A measured voice explained that a home visit had been scheduled at my parents' house. An unannounced one. My chest tightened. For years, I had kept quiet to protect the children. But now the truth would be laid bare in living rooms and kitchens I once cleaned myself. That night, I barely slept. I imagined my sister frantically hiding dirty laundry, shoving bills into drawers, painting on the smile she reserved for outsiders. But children don't lie the way adults do. They slip truths into sentences without meaning to. The next day, I got an update. A caseworker told me gently, "The kids spoke highly of you. They mentioned how Aunt Elena tucks them in, buys their clothes, helps with homework. When asked about their mother, they hesitated. That hesitation, it said more than any document. My throat tightened. Relief and sorrow collided in me. Relief that they remembered, sorrow that they had lived enough neglect to know the difference. Later that evening, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. His voice was unsteady, breaking in places I'd never heard. "Elena, the investigators are asking questions we can't answer. Your sister's furious. Your mother's blaming herself. Maybe you were right." It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something vast and irreversible. I whispered into the silence. All I ever wanted was to live my own life. He didn't reply, just breathing, heavy, ashamed. When I hung up, I realized the shift was complete. My sister's fortress was crumbling, and for once, I wasn't the one holding it up. The final hearing was held in a small, sunlit office, not a courtroom. The air smelled faintly of paper and old wood polish. My sister sat across from me, arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. Yet beneath the surface, I saw the tremor in her hands. The caseworker placed 2 files on the table, hers and mine. Side by side, the contrast was undeniable. Her file was thin, filled with vague statements and contradictions. Mine was thick with receipts, records, and the quiet proof of years spent raising children I hadn't born. For too long, the caseworker said gently, this family dynamic has placed undue burden on Elena. The children have clearly relied on her, but it is neither sustainable nor fair. Moving forward, the responsibility must rest where it belongs, with their mother. The words landed like stones in still water. My sister's jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. Maybe she couldn't anymore. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply sat there, breathing in the truth. This wasn't revenge delivered in fire. It was justice written in ink and silence. When the meeting ended, I walked outside into the autumn air. Leaves skittered across the pavement, golden and weightless. For the first time in years, I felt the same, unchained, free to drift where I chose. My phone buzzed. A final message from my sister. "You'll regret this." I stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. Her words no longer owned me. I raised my face to the fading sun and whispered, almost to myself, I gave them my 20s. Now I take back the rest of my life. And in the stillness, I knew the story was over.